Once upon a time, in a village surrounded by fog-covered mountains and time-worn roads, there lived a boy named Arlen. He wasn't born into greatness. In fact, most days he felt invisible. He was small, quiet, and constantly overshadowed by louder voices and stronger hands. His world was one of Limite Shinji's family barely scraped by. His village discouraged dreaming, and his school taught only what was needed to survive, never to thrive. But there was something different about Arlen. Deep within him burned a quiet ember of hope. Not confidence, not belief, but something softer possibility. People called him a dreamer, and not in a kind way. Be realistic, they would sneer. You're not meant for anything beyond this village. Accept your life. Even his own father, worn down by years of hard labor, would shake his head and say, "Dreams don't fill stomachs, boy. Dreams are for fools." But every time Arlen looked toward the distant peaks, where the fog broke and the sun painted gold across the valley, he would feel that ember flicker. He didn't understand it yet. But what stirred in him was the earliest whisper of positive thought. One winter evening, as the cold crept through the cracks in their cabin walls, Arlen stumbled upon a weathered book in a forgotten corner of the school library. Its pages were yellowed, its spine cracked. The title read, "The Mind is a Garden. Grow what you believe." He opened it, expecting boring stories or empty promises. But what he found was different. It spoke of energy, of visualization, of turning thoughts into actions. He read a passage that would stay with him forever. Your thoughts are seeds. If you plant fear, you grow chains. If you plant belief, you grow wings. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, repeating to himself, "I have wings. I just haven't learned to fly." Something shifted. It was small, subtle, but irreversible. The next morning, for the first time, Arlen didn't walk with his head down. He looked people in the eye. He didn't argue or shout, but he believed. He began to train his mind like others train their bodies. When his classmates mocked him, he whispered under his breath, "Their words, my truth." When his teacher told him he'd never make it beyond the village, he smiled and thought, "Not yet, but I will." Months passed, and Arlen started journaling every day. Not about what was, but what could be. He wrote about cities he would visit, languages he would learn, skills he would master. He started helping others, volunteering in silence, offering kindness where there was none. People didn't understand his change. They thought he was pretending, but Arlen wasn't pretending, he was practicing. Every day, he trained himself to see possibilities where others saw endings. And slowly, very slowly, his outer world began to match his inner one. At 17, he left the village with nothing but a backpack, a pocket full of coins, and a heart full of fire. His journey was brutal. He was rejected by schools, laughed out of interviews, and often went hungry. But he never let the outside define his inside. Each failure he saw as training. Each no was a weight that built his resilience. He kept reading, kept growing, kept writing his visions. He lived in basements, worked odd jobs, but at night he studied. Not just books, but people. The successful ones, the happy ones. He studied their habits, their thoughts, their beliefs, and realized that the only real difference between them and everyone else was mindset. He began speaking to small crowds in community halls, telling his story not of success, but of belief. People listened, some laughed, but some leaned in. Those few became many. Soon he was speaking to hundreds, then thousands, then stadiums. He wrote a book, then 2, then 10. His name became known not because of his wealth, but because of the way he made people feel. He didn't just speak, awakened people. He reminded them that they weren't broken, they were buried. That potential wasn't missing, it was waiting. Years later, a letter arrived from his old village. A boy, just like he once was, had found Arlen's story in a library. The boy wrote, "I never believed I was allowed to dream until I heard yours. Arlen wept that night. Not because he was proud, but because he understood the full circle of thought. A single belief he once whispered in the dark had lit a fire in another soul. And so, the chain of light continued. Because that's what positive thinking does. It doesn't just change your world, it changes the world of everyone you touch. You see, most people are prisoners of their own thoughts. They live in cages made of doubt, fear, and past failures. They wait for someone else to unlock the door. But what Arlen discovered, and what you must realize, is that the key has always been in your hands. The thoughts you choose become the life you live. So the question is not, are you ready? The question is, are you willing to believe even when no one else does? Are you willing to think boldly, positively, outrageous until the world catches up to your vision? Unlock your potential. Harness the power of positive thinking. Not tomorrow, not when it's safe. Now. Because your wings are waiting.